Alrighty, welcome back to the Airport Road podcast, hosted by Tonique Media, of course. Today's a special episode. We got Jarett Diaz with us. We're going to be talking to him a little bit. First and foremost, Kate, how you doing today?
Doing all right.
Are you doing all
right? Yeah. Been a day, man. It's Thursday. I'm pissed.
All right, we'll get into that because I think Jarett, you could actually probably help him out with this. Looks like you might be muted, Jarett, by the way. But you've probably seen Jarett. He's been on Know Your Balls podcast a couple times, talk sports. He knows his balls for sure. But we kind of just want to bring you on and talk to you a little bit about some other stuff, Jarett, because you do some interesting things, man. But if you want to introduce yourself for those who don't know you.
Sure. So, what's up? I'm the Bodega boy, Jarett Diaz. I am an independent wrestler. I am a personal trainer, and first and foremost, I am a sports contributor and lead wrestling writer on Tonique Media. Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course, man. And of course. So we always just talk about whatever. We go off the rails here. Cade's upset. So you're a personal trainer. This is something you could probably help us out with. Cade, why are you upset? Why are you pissed off today?
Well, I'm doing a fast, 24 fast. Yeah.
Why?
So I did it.
What, man?
So I used to be like on this all the time. I did a month of doing this, right? And this was a regular thing for me. But yesterday, I haven't done it in a while.
Fast? Like, what's the idea?
No, so 20 hours of fasting, 4 hours of eating. So my eating period is between 3 and 7. I've done this before. Like I said, I was really big into fitness and I was looking good and stuff like that. My mental state was hanging by a thread, however. I haven't done it all of quarantine. Quarantine, dude, I just ate like shit over and over, deep fried everything. You know what I mean? And now I'm back on it. So yesterday was my first day and it went well. I feel a lot cleaner.
How are you feeling?
Now, well, this is my second day and I'm fucking agitated.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how it's going. Been drinking a lot of coffee, a lot of black tea. I'm a little pissed. I only got 1 tea bag right now. I usually put 2 in it.
So, Jarett, how unhealthy is that to fast? How unhealthy is that to fast for like that?
It depends. So, if you're an athlete, specifically a high performance athlete, you can't go with that calorie deficit throughout the day. Not good for you, especially if you're exercising like every single day at a high rate, 1 to 2 to 3 hours. If you're a normal person, it could be worse. Obviously, you're not expending as many calories, as much energy, which means you don't really have to bring as much in. What Cade was saying when he was eating like garbage during quarantine. What were you doing during quarantine? You were sitting on the couch watching TV, playing video games, whatever, streaming a million shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not great either. I think there's a middle ground here that you should try finding. I couldn't imagine fasting as an athlete who, I spent the last week and a half or so home because of an appendectomy I had. But prior to that, I'm in the gym 5-6 days a week, sometimes 7. So I couldn't imagine going 20 hours a day without food. I'd die or kill somebody else first.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna keep putting Kate on blast here. I apologize. So this is also something that him and I were arguing about, probably an hour ago. I think it's very unhealthy. This guy wants to get down. He wants to get down to a weight that's lower than what he was when he was in high school.
Yeah.
Wow. If you don't mind my asking, what is the weight you're shooting for?
It's 130.
Oh my God. Can I?
I
don't understand.
I feel like that.
How tall are you?
So, I'm not tall, like 5'7", 5'8". Okay. Yeah, pretty short guy. But here's the thing. Now I weigh about 180s right now. Most I've ever weighed in my life. That's for sure.
Because I said there's some sort of middle ground. How does 155 sound?
That's what I said. Because a couple years ago when Cade was doing his fasting, he was doing his 3K. He was blending his chicken, right? That's how he was taking his food in. And yes. And he was around that weight, around 150. I told him that's a great shape right there. That's a perfect 130. I said is That's like a crackhead body for, you know what I mean?
Look, yo, at the end of the day, look, man, it's your body, is your choice. If you want to get to 130, then I hope that for you. But I don't recommend it.
So his plan is to
whatever,
drop
man.
50 pounds in 50 days. That's
Oh
unhealthy.
my
That's
god,
not
no,
healthy.
that's
right?
no. That's legitimately unhealthy. I would say double that time. double the time. Give yourself. If you lose a pound a day at that rate, I'm not even playing. Your organs are not going to be functioning properly. Your body's going to think something's wrong. Like, please don't do that. Please don't drop that much weight that quick. 50 pounds, 100 days, you're going to be in a better place. I promise.
Well, we'll see where I'm at next episode.
Okay.
We'll see if I'm even here next episode. So what you mentioned that you're a personal trainer. If I remember correctly, you and your dad.
Yeah. So my dad
do that together, right?
My father was a police officer. He was the #1 athlete in the NYPD Academy. He literally holds like a dozen records through the police academy. Played football for them, and when he finished playing football for them for 20 years, he started teaching and started teaching gym and coaching football as well. And he transitioned that into personal training and personal coaching, private coaching as well. So when I was 14 or 13, he started up the business. I started helping with him, and it just turned into me doing it as pretty much a part-time hustle, side job type thing. So I do that for mostly private training, sometimes with full teams, with my dad as well. And we have athletes anywhere between 6 to 60. We train people of all ages, but predominantly high school and college, and some pro athletes as well.
Real quick, did you say 6?
Yeah, we have a client who's 7 years old, and he started with us last year. So he started with us at 6. That's our youngest.
Wow.
He's going to be a beast. His older brother.
What is that training?
So he's a lacrosse player and football player at the Pop Warner levels, of course, but we mostly have him doing footwork and speed and agility, as well as lacrosse ball skills. And like, he'll bring in his stick and his gear, and he'll run up against pads and shoot at our lacrosse goal that we have in facility. We don't have them messing with weights. We don't have anybody under the age of 15 messing with weights at all.
Okay,
but
that's what I
the predominance of our training in general is mostly speed and agility and sport-specific drills.
So this kid's probably already well beyond.
Yeah, he's a beast. He's a beast.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Cade's dad actually is very similar too. He was a coach, right? Your football coach, taught gym.
Yeah. So growing up, we kind of did the same thing. Like during the summertime, we do a lot of. We didn't lift weights until around that time as well. What we did is we did a lot of footwork drills. Always speed and agility, box jumping, a lot of ladder stuff.
Yeah.
Always, man. Every summer, dude. It was fucking brutal.
What was your sport?
I was mostly tennis. That was the sport I excelled at the most. So I did a lot of footwork stuff. Just trying to be able to bounce around the court easily. Stuff like that. So I never really got into the heavy lifting stuff. My little brother, he's a college baseball player. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, why am I questioning that?
I don't know why you looked at me for that.
Anyway, yeah. So he does a lot of lifting and stuff like that. A lot of stuff with strength and conditioning.
For sure.
So that was more his focal point.
Did your because you were football? I'm assuming you probably played a bunch of different sports, right? But you played football, you said.
I actually didn't. I played basketball until I was 12. I played one season of Little League baseball. All I did was play football. I knew from a very young age, 5 or 6 years old, I said, I want to play football for as long as I can. It wasn't even necessarily, I'm trying to make it to the NFL. It was like, I'm going to play for as long as my body lets me and for as long as I love it. I literally had that perspective at like 9, 10, which I don't know if that's unheard of or whatever, but so I played up until my sophomore year of college. I was in the middle of nowhere in Indiana at this Division II school called Anderson University. And after that, I left that school. It wasn't really a fit. It was very, coming from the Bronx, coming from New York City, it's like total culture shock as well as it being a very religious school. It wasn't really a fit. So I came back home, and that's when I started doing some acting and some I leaned more into personal training, and then I started performing in wrestling a couple years later. So that was a shift, but football was the focus for like most of my life.
Yeah, talking about that, the religious small school, dude. I had a couple of them down in Kansas
Oh
for,
man,
for
yeah.
tennis. And what you had to do, they had like the coach calls me. He's like, "Yeah, so what we do is we pray before and after the court." I was like, "Yeah, no." I mean, nothing against like
it was
a
a lot.
religious school, but yeah, I mean that's totally like different from just growing up. You know what I mean? So I totally
Mhm.
understand that
No,
that
okay.
ideological
I
difference.
didn't even know, man. They didn't let me in on this during my visit. Like I got to the
Oh
school and they were
man,
like, "Okay,
That's
we
how they
have
get you.
we have school mandatory chapel hours, we have school mandatory Bible study, we have team football chapel hours, and we have team Bible study by position group. Every Friday after our team meetings before Saturday games, we have a chaplain come in and pray with the team. It was a whole lifestyle that is not necessarily like is something I didn't like as much as like because it wasn't something I was ready for. And
that's
fitting in that scenario where there's you have 100 teammates and they're all with it, and you're one of few that are uncomfortable. That was a tough dynamic for
mm,
sure.
yeah, it's gotta be it's gotta be totally different, man. Yeah, I couldn't swing that. I mean, that takes a lot of dedication. That takes a lot of love for the sport. And I even got offered like a pretty cool D2 offer in this place called Western New Mexico, which is in Silver City. It's a small town. I come from a small town called Roswell, New Mexico.
Hmm.
But I mean, at that point, like, that's cool that you even gave it a shot because after tennis was done in high school, I was like, all right, yeah, that's it for me. I didn't love
I
the
on
sport enough.
that wasn't even where I really wanted to end up. Like
Hmm.
I had a couple of Division 1 interests. I had one offer from University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I wasn't like a 5-star recruit coming out of college. I was a 2-star, so like I didn't have all this attention. I didn't have all these scholarship offers or anything like that. The one scholarship offer, it was handed out last second, and it was like, hey, you still need to get into the school academically. UMass is a pretty good school. I didn't get in. So
Mm.
it was either it was either don't play or take the one offer that was left, and that happened to be the D2 in Indiana. So like I just kind of ended up there
Hmm.
in case, if the other option was don't play no more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
got you.
Well,
you know,
you were a
had to go
quarterback?
do it. Yeah, yeah, play quarterback.
That's what? Yeah.
And I'm not a big guy. I'm
Awesome.
5'11". Coming out of high school, I was 165, so I was lucky to just have eyes on me at all.
You what was your so okay, 5'11".
Mm.
I mean, that's still impressive. Did your dad ever coach you
He
growing up?
he coached me in Pop Warner, so he was a college coach at a Division 3 level, and when I was coming up, I was like 8 years old. I was starting to play Pop Warner. It was full tackle, but it wasn't really being coached well. And my dad came to a practice and he saw that and he literally pulled me off that team, put
Mm.
me in a new league, and formed a team just to coach us better.
Mm.
So you had a lot of guys who were basically, my son's going to be the quarterback because he's my son, or my son's going to be the running back and we're going to hand it off to him every play.
Mm.
So,
And it
hey,
just it
yeah.
wasn't good. And that's so much Pop Warner uh, format. I'm sure you guys have seen it at the younger age too. Like, oh, my son's the point guard, my son's the pitcher, the shortstop. Like that's always how it was.
I always reference this. I played in a because we don't have Pop Warner here in Albuquerque. It's called like YAFL. It's the Young American Football League, but I think that's just here in Albuquerque. I don't know about Pop Warner outside.
I don't know.
No. Anyway, when I was still in elementary school. I forget what age. I played on a team where we had like 7 or 8 coaches. Every single coach's kid was starting. Like the head coach, who's he's a good guy. I like him now. I didn't like him at the time. It's Kay's our realtor.
Mm.
um, his son was like this chubby, unathletic, like uncoordinated guy. He's a starting quarterback and starting middle linebacker. And that's
Yeah.
just how it was. And I didn't get to play. Like I hated that team. I left that team because I never had a chance to like ever play. And, I was tiny. I wasn't very good when I was little, to be honest with you. I was like too small, but
But how are
it
you
was
going to
just
get better if you
it
don't want to
sucked.
play?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I
Right.
ended up leaving and going to a team where we had 3 coaches. None of them had kids that played. Like they just coached because they liked it, and that was probably the most fun I've ever had playing. You had an opposite experience, right?
I mean, if I'm gonna be in the spotlight again, yeah, I guess so. But yeah, I played quarterback as well, and I was like, if there was a thing for negative stars, that's what I was. So my dad was the coach. I was like a what do you call it? More of a like I knew the playbook front and back, right?
Sure.
It's a thing that came second nature, and my dad was the coach, but there was kids who were definitely like 6'2", more athletic, got a cannon for an arm. I couldn't even fit my hand around the ball, to be honest with you, and obviously they started, but I rode the pine the whole time. Honestly, I didn't even mind it because, like I said, tennis was my sport, and I hated getting hit. I hated contact. I would cry, not literally
Yeah,
inside.
yeah. You just get up.
Yeah, yeah. You get hit so hard, you're just like, oh God, why am I
Right.
fucking doing
I
this?
get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I was coming up junior senior year around the time that Johnny Manziel was like
Huh.
making it big, and so
Mhm.
I was often compared to that in terms of play style, like very improvisational. Sometimes would forget the play and just make stuff up. Like that's
Mhm.
I
Hope
was
for the
definitely
best.
more of that help, but less so of the chaos and like the erratic behavior. I've never like gotten arrested or anything like that, but
Mhm.
that's the kind of player I was, and like I guess I was undersized, so
You could
I
say
was kind
you
of
had
so
a
my dad coached me in Pop Warner, and then once I went to middle school, high school, he was like, "All right, hands off. Like I'm gonna train you independently, but I'm never gonna coach you again because you need to learn how to be coached elsewhere." So
I agree because I got a little one, and obviously like
he's
I've never like coached
he's
whatsoever.
a
I
cutie.
understand the game. He was a troublemaker on that last podcast. He's a cute kid. He's like at those terrible twos age where he's just like nothing satisfies him right now. He just wants to, he's just trying to figure out the world. But thank you. But like he's gonna play football. Obviously, I'm gonna put him in football probably as soon as I can. I will tell you what, like I want to coach him. My little brother's a really good football player right now, and he wants to like coach him when he's older too. But like little kids when they play when they're tiny, I don't know if I could coach them when they're before they get to 10 years old. That looks so difficult. That looks
Yeah.
so horrible. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like you
Yeah.
need a lot of patience for that. But no, I agree with you. Like I want to coach him, but it's obviously it's going to get to a certain point where, yeah, you need to go somewhere else where you can learn more, be disciplined a little bit better. You know what I mean?
No,
I
absolutely.
think some people hold on to that a little too long, and they don't realize. But I mean, you can say that you had a similar career path, quarterback wise, to Johnny Manziel. He didn't amount to much more than you did in the NFL.
He
So
went a couple years and then just floundered. No, yeah, that was one of my guys. I was a big fan of the ego, the attitude. It sort
yeah,
of likened itself to
Money
pro wrestling
Manziel.
or MMA, the sort of showmanship that I always gravitated towards anyway.
Yeah, let's get into the wrestling part of things. All right.
Yeah.
So
Oh, please.
myself, I have no idea what wrestling is. I've never watched it. I had a video game one time on the PS2, and that's how I know a few wrestlers like The Undertaker, Sting. Sting's a pretty cool dude. I like that guy. Triple H,
You know
uh,
all the legends.
Ric
Yeah,
Flair.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
You're the
all the
household
names that like
names.
everybody knows.
Edge. Edge is cool. I like the Edge.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, at the same time, I still don't know anything about it. So could you explain to me? And this is broad, but just
Sure.
give me what the main
You want
theme is.
you want to know what pro wrestling is? I'll tell you what pro wrestling is. It is it's stage combat mixed with gymnastics, mixed with MMA. So basically, it's uh it's theater that hurts, right? If you're a part of it, it's like essentially two guys, sometimes more, but typically it's two guys get in a ring. You have some stuff planned out, some stuff you don't have planned out, and you just go do it. If I say punch me in the face, guess what? They gotta punch me in the face. Are they looking to break my jaw? No, but are they gonna make it look good enough for them out there to believe that you just punched me in the face? Absolutely. So what I do as an independent wrestler is I market myself as basically a brand or it's a tiny little company, right? I'm a teeny little company. And I go to wrestling promotions that say, hey, we book local talent or we book talent across the country. We're going to run a show here at this venue on this date. We're going to run this show once a month and we're going to pay you X amount of dollars to come and perform. And so what I do is I travel around the country performing in front of various crowds, whether it be in Florida, Georgia, Rhode Island, Indiana, Texas, wherever it may be. I go there, I put on my match, I make my money, and I come back home. That's
I've always been.
the basic of it.
I have a couple questions because I've always been very interested in like the independent wrestling circuit.
Yeah, ask away, man.
If I'm asking too much and you don't want to answer, you don't have to. So when you travel to places like that, because you're obviously up in New York, is the traveling part like on your dime? Because I've seen like wrestlers that like obviously like the big guys like John Cena when they would come and do shows here in Albuquerque, they're not televised shows, but they do shows like house shows. And I've seen them, they have their own things. I remember I went to a show in Cruces and we were driving back to Albuquerque and we were driving next to Daniel Bryan in like a Prius or something like that.
Yeah,
And I've always
so
kind of wondered
it
about
really
that kind of stuff.
depends. So at the WWE level, right, when they're traveling nationwide for their house shows or internationally, that's not on the company's dime. You could write it off as taxes, business
Oh,
expenses. Um, you have to get yourself from show to show even at that level. Uh, you'll see some of the bigger wrestlers, like you said, John Cena or Randy Orton, Chris Jericho, guys like that. They'll have a tour bus, so they'll travel on a tour bus, and they pay someone to drive it around from show to show.
interesting. So
When you're not at that level, or if you're looking for a better, more economic way to travel, you're gonna hop in a rental car with two other wrestlers and drive hour, 2 hour, 3 hours to whatever shows. That's at the highest level. So for me, as an independent guy, especially an independent guy who's barely 2.5 years in, still trying to make a splash, still looking for that big break, which hopefully may be coming later this month. We could talk about that later. But what I do typically is travel myself. There are some companies that have traveled me. There are a lot of uh, times where I'm able to travel myself because it's easy or local. But oftentimes it's me having to get on a plane on my own and make up the difference in some other way because independent wrestling is working in a deficit. You invest in yourself and you invest in these, independent companies to book you and book you well. And you just keep doing that and losing money, hoping that it'll pay off within the first year if you get signed, which if you do it right and you get signed to the right place, it pays itself off.
That's very interesting. I never knew. I mean, I kind of had an idea that it was like that, but to that extent, um,
Yeah.
how has independent wrestling? And I don't want to talk too much about this because this topic sucks. But like COVID, how has that affected obviously the independent wrestling scene?
Yeah. So when COVID hit last March, it was like leading up to WrestleMania weekend, which is the
Mm-hmm.
biggest weekend in all of wrestling. Even Cade, you who doesn't know much about wrestling, you've
Mm-hmm.
heard of WrestleMania. It's the biggest thing in the business in the industry.
Right.
But doesn't just help the WWE. It's not just big for the WWE. Independent wrestling companies will book their shows, upwards of 200 shows into the week leading up from Monday all the way through that WrestleMania Sunday in various venues around that city, wherever WrestleMania is being held. So you could be booked on 10, 15 shows. You can do two shows a day if you're an independent wrestler because they literally go from 3 p.m. to 1 in the morning, just various shows all over the place, all over the towns. So with COVID heading right into Mania weekend, that whole WrestleMania week was canceled. Independent wrestling as an industry took a huge hit. I had 6 bookings that had to just go. They were done, and they never got rescheduled, which sucks.
Mm.
Uh, independent wrestling through most of COVID, I would say up until around last September or October, ceased to exist. Nobody was running from late March to autumn of 2020. No independent wrestling companies were functioning. WWE has their main facility, their performance center in Orlando. They were running their shows all in there. New Japan out in Japan took most of their time off, and then they started running with no fans. Impact Wrestling, they have a facility. AEW, they have a place in Jacksonville that they started running with new fans as well. Daly's place is right next to the where the Jacksonville Jaguars play football.
This is the same owner,
So the
right?
big companies were still running, but the indies were in a coma essentially. And even I thought, like, okay, I'm graduating college a month after COVID hits, or a month and a half after COVID hits. I'm trying to put my degree to work right now. Maybe I'm not wrestling anymore. And I put out this whole promo. I was like, I'm done with wrestling. Like, I hate to do it, but with COVID knocking out all these bookings and I'm graduating, I'm trying to get a quote unquote real job. So I'm done. And then some opportunities come up that say, hey, you could keep going. Like, you don't have to stop wrestling just because life has changed in such a way. Indies start to pick up in August, September, October, and I start getting these calls, and I'm like, you know what, I'm fine. Why would I stop? I don't actually have to stop. And so it occurred to me, like, all right, I can just keep going. Through the fall, it was like, all right, I have one show here, and then I have one show there, and as restrictions started loosening, specifically in Florida, which is the Wild West.
Yeah, that
They were
opened up
running
quickly,
shows
didn't it?
weekly in Florida. The shows are running all over the place in Florida, so I was able to work it. And now, as I got vaccinated, and millions of people across the country have been getting vaccinated, shows are starting to open up all over the place. So, unfortunately, with this appendectomy, I had to cancel a couple, but I have shows now in Massachusetts, in Florida, in Rhode Island, in Georgia, in Indiana, one in Puerto Rico. Like, I'm able to now open my schedule back up, and as these places start coming up, like, the indies aren't dead anymore, which is amazing.
That's awesome. I've
Sorry,
always
that was
been
super
very
long-winded, but
no, hey, go for it, man. I really like hearing about this stuff. I'm very intrigued by like the presentation of wrestling itself. That's why I get so frustrated when I see these comments of people like, um, even if I'm on Twitter and like Bleacher Report post something that happened on SmackDown or Raw or pay per view or whatever, and there's always those comments like, "Oh, this is fake. It's not a sport. This isn't a sport. Why are you tweeting this? This isn't real." And are you one of those people? And be honest.
I don't care that much to do that.
Yeah. But do you feel that way though? I know you're not going to comment it, but do you feel that way about it?
Not really. I mean, since I was aware of wrestling, I always knew it was more of a theatrical thing.
Yeah,
I
it's more of a
understand
show.
that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand it. It's not like I'm mad at it. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Let me pose a question for you guys. How old were you when you learned that wrestling is what it is, and how did it make you feel?
Yeah. Oh, my dad was a huge WWE guy, and he liked these dudes with like the pads. They had spikes coming out of it. They were partners.
Legion of
Oh, the
Doom.
Brothers
They're
of
a tag
Destruction?
team, and they're
The Legion
fire.
of
They're called
Doom.
the Road
That's what it was.
Warriors. Yeah.
Road
Yeah.
Warriors. Yes, that was
And
what's his name? His son played in the NFL. What was it?
Laurinaitis.
James Laurinaitis.
Yeah.
He recently passed away, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so
Correct.
he like was in the golden age of like when WWE first came prominent.
It's called the Attitude Era.
Okay.
That's what it is.
All right. I don't know my terms, so bear with me. So anyway, I mean, that was just one of the things he just told me. He was like, yeah, it's fake as hell, but it's really fun to watch. Ric Flair was one of his favorite guys too. Like, but
Ric
yeah.
Flair, what a legend. I remember when I was younger, I don't remember, I was probably like 9 years old, and this kid, one of my dad's friend's son, told me that wrestling was fake, and I was like, never watched WWE, nothing. And I remember telling people like, oh, yeah, it's fake. What, like, to me that was a big revelation. But then I never really paid attention. When I was probably like in high school, like right when I was getting ready to start high school, around 13, 14, my little brother, who was like 4 at the time, really got into WWE. And I from watching it, it's very, very blatantly obvious that it's not real. My little brother thought it was real because he was 4 years old, and I kind of went along with it. And that's kind of how I got into it. Like it became something that him and I bonded over. We went to like house shows. We went to a couple pay-per-views. I remember I got to see the Royal Rumble back in, gosh, I forget what year, but it was when The Rock faced CM Punk for the WWE Championship, or it might have been the World Heavyweight Championship. Chris Jericho made his. Yeah. All right, yeah, Jericho made his return. It was an awesome, and I didn't even fully understand what I was watching at the time, because I didn't really know. Like when Chris Jericho came back, there was a huge pop. I had no idea who Chris Jericho was. looking back, I go back and it's like one of the most iconic returns in WWE
Yeah,
return, and I'm like, oh shit, I was there.
even I knew Chris Jericho from VH1's like top. He used to do this thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I can't remember
Yeah. He started doing like
yeah,
TV
yeah,
hosting, and he has a band. Like
yeah.
he's
Mhm.
a pretty prominent
Mm,
dude. So you
mm.
guys are saying basically you didn't really carry the way.
No.
That's
Yeah, yeah,
that's
exactly.
oftentimes the case, right? I find it really interesting when somebody finds out it's fake and they get all mad. They get like, "Oh, I'm never gonna watch it. It's fake. It's so stupid. It's this. It's that." I went in the total opposite direction. I learned that it was staged, that it was choreographed when I was like 11 or 10 years old, and that's when I fell in love with it. I was like, "Yo, like these guys are paid to put on this, like this sort of play. This is amazing." So I almost went in the opposite direction. Where like, all right, MMA is cool, boxing is dope, but this is that plus theatrics. Like, who is
It
not
takes a
on
lot,
board with
yeah.
this?
That's a couple. I like I said, I got a bunch of questions that I could talk about. So to kind of go back to like the whole stage thing, the played out thing. Some people like, yeah, if you watch WWE, you watch a promo, you just watch some stuff like it's obvious that it's theatrics. But you really can't deny like some of the bumps that those guys take. Like they take some hard, like there's like they do a lot of stuff where you're protected, right? But some of those
Yeah,
falls you take and some of the hits you take and some of the,
There's
they're
a lot of things
legit.
that you just can't fake in pro wrestling. So if I could just peel back the curtain a little bit, the wrestling ring itself is steel beams. It's put up with steel beams, planks of wood, and then a little bit of foam over those planks of wood. So even taking the simple suplex or body slam, anytime you take that back bump, you're just landing on wood
mm,
mostly.
mm.
Yeah.
And in my experience, the first time somebody takes what they call a bump, right? The first time somebody takes a bump, 9 times out of 10, they just quit. They don't do another one. If you can get through that first day of wrestling school where you're taking bumps and you're rolling around and like not even doing moves yet, just learning how to fall safely. If you can get through that, you're tough. You're gonna have a new respect for the sport. But most people don't understand that just taking those simple bumps is punishment enough.
Yeah, no. Have you ever been injured during a match, or what's the worst injury? I'm sure you've gotten a couple.
Yeah, so I have been hurt way more playing football in my nearly 15 years. I would say 15 years
Mm.
playing football. Hurt way more. A couple separated shoulders, a myriad of concussions, ankles, wrists, hands. Broke most of my fingers already. Like that's all football. In 3 years of wrestling, the only thing I can say that I really messed up is I fractured my elbow, and there was swelling about the size of a tennis ball
Mm.
underneath it. And I ignored it. I wrestled with it until it just got worse. And so I went to the hospital. I got the X-rays done, and they said, "Hey, have this swelling. You have a hairline fracture in your elbow. We're not going to drain it because it could get infected. So just ice it." There was one other time where I thought I shattered my ankle. It turns out I did not. It was just a wild bone bruise, which is crazy because I'd never had that kind of pain in my ankle
Mm.
before. But for someone who played football and say, all right, I haven't separated my shoulder since, I haven't had any concussions since, my neck and my back hurt, but there's nothing actually wrong with them. It's just from the grind. I'm much happier. I'm much happier. I'm actually a lot safer now than I was before.
One of my favorite movies of all time is actually The Wrestler, and in that with
That movie's
Mickey
heartbreaking.
Mickey
Rourke.
Rourke, yeah,
Never seen it.
great
Hmm.
dude, and
Yo, go watch it like tonight.
yeah, it's
I've been,
great.
it's on my radar. Like I
Uh,
want to watch it. I just haven't gotten around to it.
anyway, but one of those things that he does is he carries around a razor
Mm.
in his wristbands, and like if
Yep.
he's on the ground, he'll cut his forehead.
It's blading, right? Is that the
Yeah.
Yeah,
term?
so that's called
Mm.
blading or gigging. It's a lot less prominent than it used to be. So like that guy he's playing a fictionalized version of what a lot of wrestlers of that era go through. You're super popular in the 80s and a little less so in the 90s. You come around to the 2000s and you're like a has-been, even though you're only 50 years old. So that was really prominent at that time, where it's called gigging. You basically you have a little tiny little razor blade in your trunks or in your wristband. Take it out, you get a little hairline, a little slit, and then you're showing color, you're showing blood.
Yeah.
That is not allowed in WWE and is used to varying degrees throughout the independents and in the other companies. But in WWE, that's a big no-no, especially since they went PG.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'll like point this to you just so you have an idea. Even if like on WWE TV now, if there's like an accidental cut or whatever and somebody bleeds, they'll switch to black and white for whatever reason, so they
Dang.
don't
True,
show.
or they will pause the match basically, have the doctors come down and like with a bunch of towels and try to get the bleeding to stop at least temporarily before even continuing the match, which is it's so much better. Like the health and safety protocols are so much different in WWE now than they used to be. They have the drug testing, they have steroid testing regularly, which when I spent a year, excuse me, as an intern with WWE that through 2019 as a broadcasting intern, and that was spoken about to the NXT wrestlers, which was like, um, in the case of health safety, like if this is when our drug testing is, um, they're told advance. It's not like USADA where they just do it randomly, but they don't allow for you know recreational drugs, painkillers. Even if you're like something prescribed Adderall, like you have to clear that with WWE. They're super serious now about drugs and health and safety, which is after having like the Eddie Guerrero thing and the Benoit thing, it's so much better for the company and for the boys and girls.
A lot of fans look at that as a downside uh,
Yeah.
to WWE now, though.
What are the wrestlers in like the 80s and the 90s saying about it nowadays? Are they saying WWE soft?
Yeah, you
Yes,
could go
that's
look at people like
exactly what they're saying.
yeah, exactly. Like look at somebody like Stone Cold has his podcast, constantly talks. Well, not as much Stone Cold Steve Austin, but even like Chris Jericho, he's not with WWE. He's with a different company called AEW. I mean, yeah, people say it's soft these days. It's literally been tagged like yeah, the Attitude Era. Now it's like the PG era. Like they'll
It's
even bleep
just
words.
safer. It's
Yeah,
just a safer product. Like, yeah, the from what I've learned, right? Because I'm a young guy in this industry, from a lot of the older guys looking at younger guys coming in, it's like a culture shift. Less about being this sort of macho, tough guy in the locker room, and as much it's more about like being a team and putting on a show, which is effectively what this is. And because of that shift, there are definitely older guys that look at the product as being soft and the fact that they're not showing blood and they're not on steroids 90% of the roster. Like they look at it as soft. And I don't know. I would rather this be safe and good than unsafe and a little bit better.
The,
That's how I feel about it.
the AEW? What is that?
do you know who Cody Rhodes is?
No.
Do you know who Goldberg? Not Goldberg. Gold Dust is.
No.
You know Gold Dust.
Sting.
You know Sting. Yes.
Yeah, Sting. Sting's
Yes.
sick.
So
He's,
I got him. You ready? I got
go
this.
for
Watch
it. Well,
this.
yeah, you got this
Sting,
better.
Diamond Dallas Page, Jake the Snake Roberts,
I know
Chris
him.
Jericho, right? A ton of these older legends or like former WCW guys. Well, they were all sort of mentored by this guy called Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes is a wrestling legend, all-time legend. He used to book a company called WCW. Dusty Rhodes' son is named Cody Rhodes. He
Okay.
became a WWE wrestler and then left WWE and became even better as an independent wrestler in New Japan and all over the world. Well, Cody has a couple friends named the Young Bucks. They're a brother tag team.
Okay.
The three of them together, along with the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, formed an alternative wrestling company
Kenny
called
Omega too,
AEW.
right? Sorry, I don't want to
Kenny
interrupt you.
Omega as well.
Kenny
No,
Omega,
no, no,
yes.
you're good.
Okay.
Kenny as well. So they formed
Yeah,
this
so they started their own
alternative
company.
national TV wrestling company that shows on TNT.
And they started too. Like one of their appeals when they first started was that they're gonna kind of be more so like the Attitude Era, right? They still show like
I
more
don't know if you
violent
watched
stuff.
Blood and
Even
Guts
last night, I'm not sure
night,
if you
but
caught.
was pretty
I
much.
saw the bump that Chris Jericho took, and I was very disappointed with that. How did you feel about that?
He's 51 years
I have
old.
no problem with it.
However he falls, as long as he doesn't die. That's how I feel.
The presentation of it, I wasn't a fan of
No,
because
I
obviously
agree with
there's the
I
camera
agree
work
with
was
you.
horrible.
It looked a little
But no, yeah,
soft.
it
They could have pulled some camera tricks to make it a little
exactly
more
less
dangerous
obvious.
looking. But like I said, I don't want anybody going out there dying. You
But
know?
that's all part of the theatric. Like, so okay, so yeah, like you just said, Chris Jericho's 51 years old. He was in a match last night where it was a steel cage and he fell off on this from the steel cage onto like
I
this
don't know if
steel
he's
floor.
51. I might be exaggerating slightly,
He's old.
but he's
No,
up
he's
there.
50 plus.
Hmm.
But yeah, he's close. But anyways, he falls down and he crashes through the steel floor. And they didn't cut away, like they kind of went up on it, so you could see there's a clear foam mattress like underneath it, like he fell into like a beanbag essentially, and the steel flooring was like cardboard, and it was like super obvious that
Painted
you could
to
see it,
look
that you
like
could tell,
steel. Yeah.
yeah, that you could tell, like they didn't do a good job of hiding what it was. But again, that's part of like
But
he's
not
not
to
falling straight
detract
onto the
from
steel,
the damn near hour long match that had one team versus another team, and
But
almost all of them were bleeding, and they were killing each other in there.
I
And
will say,
that's part of what I have a problem with. And this is what you said about the wrestling community too. They come in and they just jump in the comments and they freak out and they say this is soft, that is soft, this is good, this is bad. The whole match leading up was so bloody and vicious and violent that the finish of the match, the Chris Jericho giant bump, just distracted everyone from that,
that's what
and it
every,
shouldn't have. You
that's
know
what
what I mean?
everybody's talking about. Chris Jericho's trending on Twitter this morning because of that. But at the same time, you have a lot of people who are saying, you know who Matt Hardy is, right? You know the Hardy brothers.
Yes.
Okay, so Matt Hardy is also part of AEW. He took a bump. Gosh, it's
Oh,
probably already been a
nearly
year where he hit his
goes
head
up.
on concrete. Yeah, he hit his head on concrete, and people were pissed about it. And then the fact that Chris Jericho took like that soft one yesterday, everyone was like pissed about it. And it's like,
Yeah.
come on, you're not gonna have your way regardless.
So AEW is supposed to be a little bit more raw.
Yeah, it's
It's
supposed to
edgier,
be a more adult centered, adult directed program, whereas WWE they shifted to more PG direction,
a younger
more company friendly.
audience. And one of the detriments of WWE right now is they do a lot of and Jared, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but like you don't even cover Raw anymore for us for a certain reason. Raw's 3 hours long, and they do a lot of the storytelling more. It takes probably more of a center stage than the wrestling itself. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of promos of people in the ring talking. There's a lot of backstage You'll go straight from a in ring promo to a backstage promo,
you, you could go 45
and
minutes
with
without seeing a match.
AEW,
It's a tough
exactly,
watch,
exactly.
That
And
sounds
and
odd. See,
it's so odd.
that's the
It's so
point I
odd
don't like.
because they do that on Monday nights, and then on Friday night SmackDown they don't. They just don't. It's a totally different show made by
it's
the
only
same
2 hours
company and
too, though.
ultimately by the same people.
But it's only 2 hours. That extra
Yeah,
hour, I
that's
really
true.
feel hurts Raw because it really cuts into their. I mean, they it's obvious they're trying to draw out and they're trying to like fill up that time. I don't know why they're still going
I
for three
I can
hours.
honestly say in my experience in covering Raw this specifically now for the last couple months for La Tonique is that like I actually look forward to the third hour of Raw more than anything because the first 2 hours is so storyline
Draining.
heavy and promo focused. Not to mention over 3 hours you see the same 8, 9 people.
Yeah.
Whereas on SmackDown for 2 hours you're going to see the same amount or more variety. And it's just a tougher watch on Mondays. It's not. I'm not saying it's a bad show. It's a long show.
And that's what doesn't make sense to me. Because I'd argue that WWE probably has this most talented roster than it's had in a long time.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have NXT, which is like their developmental show, right? Is that what you interned for? You were working with NXT?
Yeah. So I was interning for NXT. I was training under Tom Phillips and Byron Saxon, who oversee all of the production that gets like all the broadcast production that gets done on
Mhm.
NXT. I
I got
was
a question. I'll get
shadowing at
back
their
to you
live
about that.
events. Sorry.
No, sorry. Keep going. I want to
Okay.
follow up on that Tom
Sure.
Phillips thing.
So I was shadowing on their live events, which is they do like this loop around Florida basically for live events at armories and like colleges and stuff like that. And then for their weekly TV, I was backstage sitting next to Tom Phillips, who was on the headset, whether it be feeding lines or reminding people what to do, or even sometimes uh, telling them to just say nothing and lay out. Like, I was watching the whole production get done, which was really, really amazing opportunity.
Is it a lot more intricate than people realize? I'm assuming.
You know what? It actually isn't. At least from the perspective that I was watching it as a broadcaster and as a wrestler. I looked at it through the lens of like, oh, this is just an indie show with really high production. But that being said, like, I wasn't part of the booking or the writing process. I wasn't watching the show get cut up. I wasn't part of the lighting or anything like that. Like, all I did was watch the broadcasters and the wrestlers. And what from that lens, it's I'm watching two of the best wrestlers in the world put a match together the same way I would with somebody. It just was better.
Interesting. I'm sorry, Kate. I got a bunch of questions. I want to get back to the Tom, the Byron Saxon stuff, like the commentary stuff,
Sure.
how it kind of shifted. But first and foremost, you kind of talked about this is something I've been meaning to ask. What goes into like preparation for a match? Because we do, like I said, here in New Mexico, we've never had like a live show. They've all been house shows. We're here in Albuquerque. There's a city that's probably about 3 hours south called Las Cruces. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't Cruces. Anyways, there's been a time where me and my family went down to the house show in Cruces, and then we drove back up, and like 3 days later went to the house show here in Albuquerque. And some of the matches are almost beat for beat the exact same. I've always been curious about like the preparation. Like, do you guys practice in the ring together? Like, how do you kind of because the match, like I said, it was
So
almost move for move,
yeah,
very
yeah,
similar.
yeah. So on the house show loop in WWE, that's basically what you're seeing. It's no different than if you go to a circus. You're gonna see just about the same show, which is why you only go see the circus in your town. So it travels like that a lot on the house show loop. The show doesn't change too much because oftentimes on the house shows you're going to see something that they're either prepping to be about to put on TV, whether it be Raw or SmackDown, or you're smack dab in the middle of a story. Maybe it's between Bray Wyatt and Daniel Bryan, so they're going to wrestle on each house show up until the big pay per view where they've already tried out what works and what doesn't with
Gotcha.
crowds with live crowds,
So I've
and
noticed
that's
that.
that's at
Yeah.
the highest level. On the indies, you get told who you're going to wrestle, hopefully before the show, hopefully before you get to the show, but sometimes not. Sometimes you find out when you get there,
Hmm.
and you might
So
just
how
be
did
booked for the show and not know.
So is it a lot more improv in ring stuff, or how does it? Because I
It
know the ending is predetermined typically. Like I'm just really curious into like
For
the
sure,
lead
yeah.
up to
Like,
the
yo, let's
match
peel the curtain
itself.
all the way back, man. No problem. So basically, you'll on my level at least, right? You get to the independent show, you know who you're gonna work. The booker will tell you, all right, Diaz is up. You have 8 minutes. Go.
Hmm.
That's it. And so the wrestler that I'm facing and myself, we'll get together. We'll talk about the finish that he wants, figure out specifically what he wants to see because he might want a dirty finish to tell a story, or he might want a clean finish just to show that one wrestler is better than the other. It could be whatever the booker wants. And then from there, you just figure out the rest. You figure out what sort of story you want to tell. So let's say I'm a bad guy and I'm a dickhead. So I'm going to be mean to the fans. Maybe I try and cheat to win, things like that. Those are all things that are left up to me and the guy I'm working against. That's at the independent level. At the WWE level, they have math producers, they have agents that collaborate with the two wrestlers that are going to be working against each other, and that's more tightly designed, more tightly choreographed, less improv, because they have the time and they have the help.
But the moves and stuff themselves, those are pretty like on the spot kind of things. Is it? I mean,
Uh,
I'm assuming these guys kind of
it,
know
yeah. So
essentially. Like
so
you.
hopefully you have been trained well enough to know what all the moves are called,
Mm.
so that if you get in the ring with somebody and they say sell up, eat a boot, suplex, that means okay, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna get kicked, and then I'm gonna get suplexed. Like, there's little lingo and code words and quick verbiage that has to happen in the ring so that you don't have to call every single moment in the locker room. The locker room stuff is sort of saved for like the important moments of the match. Every match is like a story structure. So if you're going to begin the match with the good guy shining, which is what it's called, like a shine, if you're going to start with the good guy getting his cool stuff in the beginning, you're going to call that in the locker room. But once that good guy gets cut off and the bad guy sort of takes over, a lot of that is just improv and the bad guy controlling the match and telling the good guy what's coming next until you get to that next big moment.
What do you typically present it as, a face or a heel? Is that like, is it
I
random, like dependent on the booking?
it depends on the booker, but a lot of times they'll try to figure out what you're best at and either present you in a way that helps you, or they'll try and make you do the opposite and force you to get better, which I've actually found more common since coming out of COVID, because a lot of people are out of practice. A lot of people haven't done what they do so frequently. So I've been told more regularly to present myself as a babyface, even though I'm typically a heel coming out of COVID. And also, since moving back to New York, because I'm from here, it's a little harder to boo the guy that's from here.
Oh, yeah. Babyface is a good guy. Obviously, heel's a bad guy. Those are
Gotcha.
the terms.
Yes, Cade, we're throwing a lot of lingo your way, a lot of inside baseball. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
If you
cool.
have
I
questions,
enjoyed
just raise your hand or
Yeah,
just interrupt me, bro.
it.
No, like I said, I really enjoy like the whole production thing. Like I'm always curious how it goes, because I mean it looks so flawless. Like, yeah, you'll see a couple like botches here or there, but um,
Yeah, that
to
all
go
comes
back to the
down to the
commentary.
communication.
Yeah, I've always been interested. I mean, you could catch some of the communication stuff. Like you can catch sometimes, but it's hidden pretty well. But that's pretty cool. But the commentary stuff, there was a shift in commentary on both Raw and SmackDown. How do you feel about it?
Honestly, I was thrown. Like I even texted Tom Phillips and I was like, "Yeah, like where are you? Like what? I'm confused." And he had told me that he was taking a more backstage role, so he's still doing main event. But he last year got promoted to VP of talent. So Michael
Oh,
Cole, who's the lead commentator of SmackDown, he's WWE's guy. He's their ace in the hole. He's the president of all broadcasting talent. So he's he's in charge of SmackDown essentially, and then Tom Phillips, who was the lead commentator on Raw, he got moved off. But instead of promoting this guy Vic Joseph from NXT, they actually brought this guy from ESPN, Adnan Burke.
you know who that is?
I don't know if he's a baseball guy.
Yeah,
He's
he
he's
wasn't a WWE guy. He was a baseball like ESPN on air talent.
Wait, what's his name?
Adnan Burke.
Yeah.
So he's it's been interesting. Like he's definitely not he's not what you're used to hearing on WWE programming, because the Performance Center is such a how do I describe it? It's an
You
all-encompassing
talking about the
experience.
Thunderdome?
It's very fully encompassing, the
Mhm.
Performance Center. So when you get there to be trained, you get trained in a very specific
Mhm.
way, which in some cases can make the announcers sound the same. Whether that
Yeah.
be good or bad is up to the beholder. I don't think it's a bad thing, but when you hear a guy like Mauro Ranallo on NXT, who he's also done UFC and he's done boxing, and he's incredible, but he's very different, and so he sometimes bucks the system. So they bring in this guy Adnan Virk, and it's very different. It's a little less controversial, I think, but it's definitely interesting. I don't love it, if I'm being honest. I'm a little more geared towards hearing wrestling commentary on a wrestling show, but that doesn't mean that he won't get better. That doesn't mean that I won't get used to it. It's just
It's
it's a
different.
little
Yeah,
jarring.
it's a curveball. They also, I think I might have told you, they put Pat McAfee as commentator on SmackDown.
That's true.
I
They did.
saw that. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So I'm
And
a Colt fan. I
he's been in the
love Pat
performance
McAfee.
center for a couple years now, so he knows the
Yeah.
thing. He just doesn't leave his
When
own
he was already
brand or
doing the
personality, which
pre-show,
is great.
yeah, he was already doing the pre-shows. He's done like a couple matches in NXT. I mean, he does the Pat
He's
McAfee show
great.
every
I
now and
got
then.
a chance to
He's
I got a
a
chance
natural
to call a
talker.
match with him at the performance center, and he's been fantastic.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm a huge Pat McAfee guy. I've really enjoyed it. I'll be honest, like I don't watch much WWE programming anymore. Just like I'm at work when it happens typically, and it's hard to like go back and rewatch them. So I mean, like I'll watch the highlights. I honestly like my main intake is from your articles. So I'm not gonna have any clue of what's going on with
I'm
Rob,
sorry,
but that's
I
okay.
can't provide those anymore.
No, that's
I gotta write
fine,
other
man.
stuff. Chugging out
I
a raw
understand.
review has been tough.
I understand. Well, hey man, I don't want to take too much time. Kate, do you have any more questions?
I this was a very informative talk today, so thank you for joining
No,
us.
I've like I
Yeah.
said, I could talk
Oh,
to you
for
about this
sure.
all day.
Mm.
Jarett, what do you got? What do you got coming up? I know you kind of teased that you got some opportunities
Yeah, so
possibly.
I have at the end of May, May 29th, it's actually going to be my second match back after the appendectomy that I had. I'm not cleared until the 27th. I have a show then, but on May 29th, I'm wrestling on pay-per-view on Fight TV, uh, presented by a company called XWA, which is located in Rhode Island. I don't know who I'm wrestling just yet, but I've been promised some good things, so I'm just going to pass that along. So check out XWA on Fight TV May 29th. Also, if you don't mind my plugging, I just launched my first piece of merchandise, the Bodega Boy Jarett Diaz first cartoon T-shirt. You can find me on Instagram at the Jarett Diaz Show. DM me if you want a shirt. That's super proud of that. I've kind of always had a dream to put my name and face on a shirt, so that's going to be really big for me. And that's about it. That's all I got going right now. Oh, and my newest article is coming out on Tonique soon.
Awesome, man. Yeah, we'll get that out soon. Hey, that's super exciting, man. I think that's awesome. I mean, you've been killing it for us, but I actually am like super looking forward to watching that because I've been curious, like how to watch some of your independent stuff because, like I said, the industry I find very very interesting. So that'd be cool, man. I'm gonna have to watch it for sure.
I appreciate it, guys. Yo, thank you
But
for having me. This was fun.
yeah, of course, man.
Yeah,
This
of
was fun.
course,
Yeah,
man. Yeah, thanks for joining. Join anytime. Let us know.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Well, again, go ahead and check out Jarett on all his socials. Make sure to check out his stuff on Tonique. What else we got coming up soon?
Typical lots of unique stuff. Make sure to subscribe to the newsletter, all the social medias, Avid Apparel. You know them. Always gonna plug in that Avid. So check it out.
Awesome.
All
All
right.
right, we'll see you next time, Jarett. Thanks again, man.
Thank you, guys.